Okay, any problems with it?
Yeah, I had some issues with like the other tool. I forget the name.
We
Not
use
the
the
pen.
clone tool, stamp tool,
Yeah, the clone tool.
clone tool. What was the problem with it?
So like when I was like cloning it, it they had the cursor and it sometimes went on the building, so that's why like there's a building there.
Yeah,
And
well,
then
you have to watch that little cursor, the
yeah.
little marker where you're sampling from. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
So you're looking at two things. You're looking at where you're painting it in, but you got to look at what you're grabbing. Because again, because I did the same thing yesterday. I went over and I started grabbing the building. I don't want the building,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Thank
So you
you.
just got to really watch that little cursor.
All
We're going
right.
to get into some other things in here too. Um, different ways of doing this same kind of thing. Okay. But you need to know the clone tool is pretty important. It's also important for like, there's a bunch of things. Like, let me find this real quick. Does that answer that?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Because it looks like everything else is fine. Because another thing you're going to do with this tool, and I'll show you a couple different ways of doing this, but one of them is when you're coming in with a raw image, you're going to come in here probably with something like this, the stamp tool. Again, I'm going to use a soft brush. Lower the opacity, and I can just come in here and kind of just clean things up here. Whatever I think is distracting. You want to get really close to whatever it is you're cloning. Like that's getting a little too much light from above, so I'd have to go below. And still getting a little too much. So there's another tool I would use. That's not too bad. But it'll be a variety of tools we use for that kind of thing. But that's one of the things you would use, okay? Now, when you get into big cleanup on a face, and again, there's nothing wrong with her face at all. But if you want to clean it up and make it look, nice and like a nice pro portrait, you're always going to clean them up a little bit. You're always going to knock out bags a little bit. Even, everybody has bags under their eyes because that's your bottom eyelid. Okay. But you're going to clean them up and all that kind of stuff. You want to do it very subtly so people don't notice. You're not trying to make them look like a different person. You're really trying to fix what the lighting did. Bad lighting. If you guys have ever been in a bathroom at night with bad lighting, you look in the mirror, you look like a horror show. Does that make sense? You'll see every horrible thing on your face in that crappy greenish blue lighting, or in like a parking structure. Okay. The lighting in a parking structure is awful. If you took a picture in there, you would look terrible. Okay. And if I'm taking a picture of somebody, I'm going to have to clean it up because I'm not a good photographer. Okay. And we'll use some other tools for that too that make it. There's even some that I'll show you later on where you can kind of subtly move an area to cover another area and sort of lower the opacity and sort of clean up a nice bigger area, right? Because if it's a bigger area, I might not want to use the clone tool because I don't want it to start repeating, and I don't want to start getting, you've probably already seen that. If you're not really careful with that tool, you'll start getting those ugly edges, where you see where it's stamped, okay? That kind of stuff I do not want, okay? It's obviously a dead giveaway that you don't really know how to use Photoshop. Does that make sense? So at some point, what's going to happen in here is I'm hoping you'll know what tool to use for what job. Does that make sense? By the way, the first project we're going to do in here will be, I just call it a movie poster loosely. I don't care what kind of poster it is. It doesn't have to be a movie. And we're going to use all these tools that we're going to use up till probably a little bit into next week. And then we'll do a project using assets and putting them together. Does that make sense? And by the way, nowadays with movie posters, that's more or less how they're made. Okay. You get a bunch of assets. And if you notice, there's not that many hand illustrated posters anymore. it all went to Photoshop. And if you notice, there's a lot of formulaic design in poster design now. Have you guys noticed that? It's the big hero head and then the three other guys over here, and then the bottom horizon with the everybody running towards the camera or riding horses, or, you know, whatever, sunset back there. And it's all at the bottom, big head clouds coming out. I mean, you see it over and over again, okay? And what you're going to see there is, like, very quickly, by the time we start this poster thing, you're going to know a lot of those tools already, because they're overlays, a lot of overlays, a lot of shifting color. And I'm guessing a lot of the reason they shift the color is because they're getting disparate assets from different, you know, stills from the movie, this, that. So if they pull a character out and they want to put them in front, the lighting might be completely different, and they might just go, well, I'll make the whole thing a sort of monochromatic blue thing or something like that. And then it pulls all the stuff into the same lighting. Okay. And it just makes your job easier. It also looks cool stylistically if it works. Does that make sense? Or I might do the opposite, character fully lit and have the background go totally monochromatic, you know, stuff like that. And I'm guessing a lot of those decisions are made because they're going, I don't want to have to redo all the lighting in this shot to make all this work, you know? And then sometimes they do. Okay. Okay. Where's Ashley at?
I'm here.
Did you do this with the smudge tool right here?
Yeah, because I kind of messed up on the sky and like I couldn't like fix it. So
you just did what I just said. So you're covering a mistake by giving it a stylistic point of view, which I think is cool, right? Okay, did you have any, well, okay, do I have anything that was selected with the pen tool?
I mostly use the Polygonal Lasso tool.
Okay, I want you to get in here and give me something with the pen tool, something curved.
Okay.
Like here, okay? Was this right here just a, yeah, that's just a bunch of stamped clone stuff, right?
Yeah, I had a little trouble with it because like.
Okay, so that's doing, okay, that's doing exactly what I just said. It's sort of repeaty, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's what I want you to understand with all these tools. I think I've said this already, but you really got to understand this. All these tools, they're, you know, again, you're going to have to know which one to use for what. Okay, so certain things that you go, oh, that looks really weird or whatever. It's like, well, I probably wouldn't use that for that. I'd use this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I can't jump. I don't want to jump too far ahead. We'll get to that. We'll get to it actually pretty fast. Okay. Any questions? No? It takes forever for people to answer. I don't know why that is. Okay, how do you pronounce your name? Asia?
Asia.
Asia. Okay. So it's almost like there's an H in there, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, and you pulled out some guides, yeah?
I don't know why those showed up.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's go. Okay, so if you look up here, if I go, and I don't even know what this is under because I've never used it. I'll find it. If you go Command R, which is just R for rulers, watch. Command R. If you notice up here, I get now a rulers. Okay, so there's a couple things here. Let's clear these out. So I'm gonna go clear guides, which is under view. Okay, so it has all your stuff here under view for your guides, lock guides, clear selected artboard guides, so on and so forth. Okay. So what happens is once I have this ruler up here, so it goes horizontally and vertically, I can just pull out of there a guide like that. Okay. You'll need it when you're doing like really straight lines and things like that. Okay. Now, the other thing is if I right click it, this is just a shortcut to change your, because sometimes you'll go in and you'll go to make something and you want to put in a size, right? I just like to use inches. Okay. For some reason, a lot of times it'll default to like picas, and like nobody's using picas anymore. So I don't even know why it does that. But if I right click the ruler right here, I get my choice to go, I'm going to switch it to inches. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then another thing I can do, let's clear guides again. Window or view, clear guides. Right here in the corner, I can zero out the measurement. Okay. So if let's say that this corner right here is where I want to start measuring from there. I can grab this and put it right there. And now if you look, my 0 is here and my 0 will be over here that coordinate to that point. Does that make sense? So then I can pull guides. So then if I want to pull a guide and go, well, I want it to be an inch away from that, I can pull it right there. And I know that's an inch away from my 0 point. Does that make sense? Really simple. Just remember R. Okay. Let me see if I can find where it is. Because I haven't used it up here. There it is right there, rulers. So it's under view. So if you notice, view is exactly that. It's just giving you options for things that are on screen, mostly for measurement and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Sort of utilitarian things you're using. Okay. So rulers is under there, and all you got to remember is Command R. Again, all your hotkeys are over here. All right. Okay, so that's why you had rulers. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. You pulled this out. Did you? Okay. What did you use the pen tool on?
I used it on the building that I copied. Yeah, that one.
You did use the pen tool?
Yes.
Okay. Have you used it before?
I tried using it once.
Is it making sense a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. It will get intuitive. Okay. You'll get where you're fast as hell with that. And if any of you are in here, entertainment people, illustrators, or graphic designers, which I'm assuming that's covering what mostly is in here, and maybe some fine art people, you're going to really need to know how to use Illustrator, and Illustrator is all pen tool based. Okay. I wouldn't ink if I was doing a commercial job, and I didn't over the years. I never hand inked anything anymore. I'd ink everything in Photoshop or in Illustrator. Okay. Illustrator has really great inking tools in there, and there's just no reason for me to do it by hand, unless I want that look or something. And it's all pen tool based. And if you're a graphic designer, to me especially, I think actually if you're an entertainment designer, any of those three, you really need to know Illustrator. Graphic designers really need to know it because it's really good for logos, but also for graphic illustration. And then entertainment design people need it because, like, if you're going to clean up a prop and you want to get it super clean, I'd take it into Illustrator, right? Then I might pull it back into Photoshop and I might render it in Photoshop, but I'm going to ink it in Illustrator. Okay. All right. Do you have any questions?
No.
Everything worked out okay? It's all good. This is really pretty good over here. Yeah?
Yes.
Should be more enthusiastic. It looks good. Yeah? Where's Casey at?
I'm right here.
Okay. Did you use the pen tool in some of these?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have 2 objects. If you open up like my layers, I have 2 objects that I labeled. Oh wait, no, I didn't label the other one. I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
it's the small thing in the back. Yeah.
Okay. You moved around quite a bit of stuff. That's good. Oh, there it is. Okay. Have you used a pen tool before? You probably have, right?
Yes, I love the pen tool.
Oh, God, that's something you never hear.
Oh.
I love it too. But mostly when students, here's the thing, usually it's an Illustrator because they have to use it all term. They hate it. Then, I don't know, as soon as they start getting pretty good at it, it doesn't take that long. They start getting pretty good at it. They love that program once they get into it, and the pen tool and all that.
Yeah.
There were so many things, you guys, with that. And I know I'm talking about Illustrator, but I'm just talking about the pen tool. Sometimes, because I spent a lot of time in the toy industry, and sometimes you're working off budgets. So sometimes they would go, hey, we don't have a big budget. It could be something that's a promotional item or something like that, whatever. And I'd go, well, let's do an activity book or something like that, right? And I could knock out, like one time, I'll give you an example. One time we did these flashcards for kids, right? And I went out and did my research and I go, man, all the flashcards for kids are actually horrible. They just are boring, right? I go, let's make them fun, But I had a 2-day time frame in that. Okay. So I had to do 26 illustrations in 2 days. Okay. If it hadn't been for Illustrator, I don't know if I could have done that. Okay. Because I would just whip out quick thumbnails. I'd throw them over. I'd email them over to the client. I'd go approve all these. And it might be 5 of them at a time or 4 or whatever. They'd approve them and I'd start going. And then I'd throw down, 3 or 4 more sketches. I'd send them over. I go approve these. And I just keep going. And I got them done in 2 days. Right now, that is invaluable, and it's also because I could take I took those thumbnails, scanned them, blew them up. I already had them because I emailed them, blew them up to my size. And then I just went right in and inked them and painted them in Illustrator right off my thumbnails. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which is why a couple of them are wonky, but most of them look fine. Okay, Casey, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, good. How much Photoshop have you done? You've probably done quite a bit, right?
I took my first Photoshop class like 15 years ago. So it's the program I feel the most comfortable in.
Okay. So we'll get past all this simple stuff pretty quick. Okay. But my thing is, and just so you guys know, my point of view is very foundational, very fundamental. Okay. One of the worst things, and I see it the most in entertainment design, is everybody thinks, oh, I want to be an entertainment designer, so I'm going to draw robots and mechs and superheroes and shit. And it's like, that's not the way to be an entertainment designer. The way to be an entertainment designer is become a really good designer, a really good drafts person, a really good color and painting person, and all those things, because if those are very solid, then you can go do anything. Does that make sense? I think. And then I can tell you from experience, if I looked at portfolios back in the day and they had that kind of stuff in it, I immediately closed and moved on because I'm like, I'm not hiring a fanboy. You know what I mean? So when we're talking about Photoshop, we're doing the same thing. We're, very foundational. We'll build up to more complex things. Yeah. Well, these are going pretty fast, actually. Okay. Who's this? Hilario?
Yes, that's me.
Okay. You did an overlay or something too. Yeah.
Overlay
purple?
as in,
This purple?
yeah.
It looks like you merged it though. Yeah.
Oh, I think I messed up. Not paying attention on the layers a little right there.
Yeah. Okay, you guys. So look, if I let's take all 3 of these real quick. And I go, oops. If I go to my flyout menu right here. Okay. So all your palettes, by the way, are going to have a flyout menu. Okay. So if you're noticing, there's multiple places you can access more tools for that particular tool set. One of them is up here in your control bar. One is the palettes we talked about under Windows, and then your flyout menu here. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have 3 selected and I can go right here and go merge layers and they all merge. Okay. It's also Command E. Okay. So you got to be careful with that. Also, I can go here. And if I wanted to, let's say this is a JPEG, it started as a JPEG. If I save it right now, it's going to go, it's going to try and save it as a PSD because it can't save it as a JPEG, right? But if I wanted to keep it as a JPEG, if I just did some simple things, I'm like, I don't need to save all these layers. I can come here and just go flatten image. And now it turns it back into that background thing, which it has to be a JPEG. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I just want to keep it a JPEG, I can do that. And then there's just other things in here. There's link layers, blah, 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 all these things. New layer. So you got new layer here. I can click this and create a new layer. I can cut and paste. It'll create a new layer. So there's always multiples of things. And then usually your tool sets have tools up here that you can access the same thing. So it's got them in like 4 or 5 different places. Okay. I'd say you're mostly going to use hotkeys for most stuff and your control bar until you get into really, really heavily editing something. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on this?
The hotkey was Control E or Command E?
Command E for to collapse, to merge selected layers.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, but everything looks good, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, good. Again, you guys are always going to be faster than I was when I did it. It was really, I think I told you, I basically was a Photoshop dropout. You know, when I took it, I was just like, screw this. Ooh, this is clean. Where are you at? You here?
Issei?
Oh, yeah, there you are. That's how you pronounce it, Issei?
Yeah.
Okay. This looks good. Okay, what got moved?
Let's see. I think,
This did. You rose this up higher.
yeah, we doubled it.
And then did one of these buildings move?
See where the tennis court is? We got
Yeah.
rid of that. I got rid of that building right there.
Okay, but you understand how to cut and paste it, move it around and all that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think I pushed it further back.
Oh, okay. Did
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like this might be, or this maybe, I'm not sure. This is pretty clean on the horizon. So you've used Photoshop before, I'm assuming, right?
No, just kept on blowing it up bigger and
Oh,
slowly
good
taking it all out.
Yeah, in reality, by the way, you guys, like I might go in and clone a little bit of the sky that way or something, but then I'm probably going to come in with like a paintbrush and kind of clean things up and smooth things out. Like it's always this process of craft. Okay. I think if you go into these programs, this is something where people get sidetracked, where they go into all these digital programs, not just this one, and they go, oh, it's going to do everything for me. And it's like, no, it isn't. It's like, you need to understand basic concepts of image creation. You need to understand, you need your eyes to be trained so that you understand, you know, more sophisticated editing. That's just experience. And you also got to look at, because if I go to my storage unit and I find old stuff that I did a long time ago, it's horrifying. Okay. And it's horrifying to me that I stood up in front of a class and I was proud of that thing. You know what I mean? But it's just the natural order of things. It should be like that. You should look at things from a long time ago and go, God, that looks terrible, because you're so much better now. Does that make sense? So I get people complaining about it all the time. Oh my God, that stuff from last term looked terrible. I go, that's a good thing, you know, because that means you're better this term. Okay. Part of the whole thing of being a good designer, by the way, is taste and sophistication and what you're consuming. Okay. Does that make sense? If you're looking at anime all the time, you're probably not going to have a very high design level, in my opinion. Okay. Because most of that stuff is pretty lowbrow. Okay. Or Juxtaposed magazine, or, you know, there's a bunch of them. You have any questions? No?
I'm thinking, you know, the pen tool was actually like, I'm not that fluid with the idea of how to use it, you know, so that took a little bit of,
Yeah, it always
know,
does.
concentration. That was probably the harder thing.
Yeah.
Just kind of like making sure not to get the other building when doing the sky. Once I figured out how not to do that, it got easier.
Yeah. The pen tool is always going to be what you just said. Everybody who starts it is sort of like, this is weird. It feels non-intuitive when you start it.
Those guidelines, because the way they move, make
Yeah.
me think it's three-dimensional, but it's not. And then applying it to some picture that's supposed to be three-dimensional was kind of like, I couldn't get my mind to do both.
Try and just look at it as an abstract bunch of forms or shapes.
Okay.
Okay, which is the same thing with drawing or painting, right? But when I'm drawing something or looking at something, I'm just seeing shapes. I'm abstracting what I'm looking at, and I'm never looking at anything going, oh, it's a car. Oh, it's a building. Oh, it's a human. I just go, oh, it's a pattern, basically, is what I'm looking at. Okay. And I try in my brain to flatten that. It's one of the things you have to learn if you're drawing or painting. You have to learn to see. Okay. Because actually drawing and painting is about seeing. It's not all this dexterity in your hands. That's what everybody thinks it is. They think it's all this dexterity. It's like, it's not. You got to learn how to see. And then this will follow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with this. So if we're editing, because that's an interesting comment. If we're editing in here, I got to just look at it purely as shape, and that's it. You know what I mean? Now, once I start moving it around and start making decisions, I can go back to going, okay, you know, I'm trying to make a cityscape or whatever I'm trying to do. I can jump back into that sort of reality of the image, but when I'm working in it, I'm just trying to keep it very sort of a pattern of shapes. That's it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because what people do then, if they don't do that, and it can be in Photoshop too, is they start, like if I take people in my Saturday class and there's something like maybe a deck or something that's coming towards them, they'll get all freaked out by the perspective. You know what I mean? and you go, you've got to abstract that form. And all it is those lines are just going at certain angles. Stop thinking of it as perspective. Does that make sense? It's the same thing. Okay. Then once they get past that, they're fine. Oh, what did you put on here?
I put something on the sky.
Yeah, that's interesting though. So you had to have you've been in Photoshop before, right?
No, I just watched your video, and I watched a couple YouTubes. So that like how to click around the.
Are these layer masks? It looks like a layer mask.
Oh, you did the gradient. Remember we were talking about the
Yeah.
sky. So I just tried that out.
Oh, okay. Good for you. Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's good. That's good. Okay, great. No questions?
It takes a lot of time.
It won't after a while. It won't after a while, man. You'll get, I mean, if you're doing this all the time, you'll burn through it like nobody's tomorrow, man. I mean, some of the time frame, go ahead.
I just got done up, like when you really blow up the picture and you, I mean, like you said, the detail of all the little people, I mean, all of the shadows and the edges of the buildings.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that kind of threw me off about like when you have to do all the little ledges and things like that. I mean, that's pretty intense. So
I mean, sometimes, yeah, you got to go and make a lot of selections and things like that. You know, there's not a whole lot of way around that, but usually I'm looking at it like we've talked about before, big to small.
okay.
You know what I mean? You know, you gotta tackle it and eventually you'll develop your own methodology around this. But you got to develop a methodology. Obviously it works for you. And you've also got to develop one that's time effective, right? Because like a lot of times I'll get entertainment people and they're looking at all these digital paintings and all this stuff. And it'll come up like, cause that looks very complex. Well, they are complex. Okay. And then they'll go, how long do you think it took them to do that? And I go, they probably did 3 of those in one day. You know what I mean? Probably did 3 of these, you know, finished paintings, 2, 3. They're doing them very quickly, but they're using a lot of Photoshop stuff. They're using a lot of, they're very good painters usually, you know, blah, 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 but they do them really fast. You know what I mean? Now you didn't used to do them as fast. They were still fast when we were doing them by hand and acrylic and all that, or gouache or whatever, but they were still fast. You know what I mean? Not quite as fast as a digital. Actually, maybe they were almost as fast. Okay, where's Julio?
I'm right here.
Okay, what do you think?
Well, definitely spend a little bit more time on this. I think I know I did. I had more problems with the stamp.
Yeah.
The coordinating between the cursor and the target, and making sure I pick up what's needed to be picked up. The pen tool, I like the pen tool. That's one of the things that I try to pick up first for whatever reason, is just work on the pen tool.
Pen tool is important, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, like I said, it's important not just in Photoshop; it's important in everything. You know what I mean? You're gonna deal with that tool in everything. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My layers, the coordinating my layers is definitely something that I need to work on.
By the way, you guys, you can just drag these. You know, if I want this to go under here, if I want this to go on top. What you can't do, if you notice, this background layer, that's bottom basement floor. You can't go below this unless I go unlock that, and now I can. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Definitely.
So remember, if you're looking at this, that little lock right there means that layer is locked, okay? So, you know, if you're having problems with something, and also it defaults to the name background. So if it's background and it's got that lock, you're not gonna be able to do much with it. You can paint on it and stuff like that, but you're not gonna be able to move it around or anything, okay? It has to sit at the bottom. Okay, and then this is just your clone stamp stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
See, what I look at when I look at that, like, I go, I could come in here if I wanted to. Here's what I do, right? Like I do something like this and I go, okay, maybe it's not what I want to do. But I go, that'd be kind of a cool technique to use if I wanted to create, like if something was on fire over here and I wanted to create smoke, then I might come in here with my smudge tools.
Smudge tool, okay.
And kind of start cleaning up these edges, or, you know, making these edges look really intentional. You know, and then I might go, I'd have to come in here and I'd probably paint back into it and stuff like that. I'd make this kind of float up and dissipate. And I'd also probably go change the color of it,
Okay.
to maybe a more, flamey or maybe even a more desaturated, like smoky kind of thing, if that's what I was going for. I could change that. And I could start, getting a nice cloud effect. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So every time I make a mistake, if there's something interesting in it, I go, I could use that for something else. You know what I mean?
I call those penicillin moments.
What does that mean?
That's an accident. Like you found
Yeah.
found out by accident.
Yeah. And the problem you see a lot right now, because digital lends itself to it. And plus now we have all these avenues, YouTube and all that stuff, where you're seeing this very formulaic solutions to everything. Okay. Oh, if I do smoke, I go look at Scott Robertson's concept design thing on smoke. And it's like, well, A, that doesn't even look that interesting. And B, is everything going to look like that? Different environments require different things. Smoke actually reacts differently in different environments. It's lit differently in different environments. It matters if it's an active fire or if it's out, if it's just, steam is different. All these things are different. Okay. You can't just find these blanket formulaic things. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. So everything else, that was fine. You just got to get used to the, whatever you call it, the clone tool. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That looks good. Okay, good. And you'd use the pen tool here. Yeah, you did. Okay. The main thing with the pen tool, you guys, I'm trying to get to, if you're just doing a straight line or whatever, that's fine. But that curve thing is you have to go, people go like, they kind of, when they usually started, they kind of try and do like a point and then sort of draw it. And it's like, you got to go point and then point over here and then pull it to your curve. Okay. And you'll get intuitive with that and you'll start to know like, oh, I can, I'll start here. Like if it's a pretty smooth arc like that, I can probably do that in one point, like one pull. But if it's a complex curve that's like much more drastic, I'm probably going to have to go up, curve it, make another one, curve it. The thing I don't like in Photoshop, and I'm going to look this up actually, because I think it's weird they don't have this, is I don't think there's a smoothing tool in Photoshop. And in Illustrator, there's a smoothing tool. Okay. Which means I can go in when I get a little kink in there and I can just run my smooth tool over it and it smooths out that curve. Okay. And maybe it's buried in here somewhere. I'll look today, see if I can find it, but I don't think they have it. So you have to go in and, manipulate it a little more. Okay. Now, having said that, you're not usually doing drawing so much in Photoshop unless you're doing it with a brush or whatever. Okay.
Okay.
And I think I've said, I think I already said this, but if you want to use a pen, a stylus in this class, which would be good to get used to, but you don't want to go buy a Cintiq because they are ridiculously expensive. Just go, I think they have them at Best Buy. Go to Best Buy and get the little Intuos one. Have we talked about that? I keep one in my bag here. It's this, right? It's got a little USB cord. I don't know, they might be Bluetooth by now. And then it comes with a little stylus, right? Works great. I used them for years. And I still use it. Like if I'm on the road or whatever, I want to do something and I might just pull out that Intuos. Some people tell me they have a disconnect with drawing here and looking up there. I never have. And for a long time, I didn't like drawing on Cintiq for some reason. Probably says use just the Intuos. The Intuos are about $100. Okay. I have a 16 Wacom Cintiq here. I think they're about $800. But if you get like a 24, 22, something like that, they jump up to like $2,400, $3,000. I think they're horribly overpriced personally. I got mine for free. So, and then I have a mobile studio over here, Wacom, and I think that thing's like $4,500. Okay. Which makes no sense to me. Okay. By the way, it's way too heavy to be a mobile studio. To me, you're better off drawing on a iPad Pro, right? It's a better experience. But the mobile studio will it's running full Photoshop. So that makes a big difference. I've heard they have ported Photoshop to iPad. I've heard it's not very good. Okay. I don't know though. I haven't tried it. I have a feeling it's not though, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. Okay. Where are you at?
I'm here.
How do you pronounce your name?
Castro.
Oh, okay. So it's just like, I don't know why I never think people's names are going to be pronounced the way they look.
It's just like it.
Okay. So this over here has been cloned. What building was moved? Oh, this one was right here.
Yeah.
And then, okay. And here's your curve. Okay. Do you have any questions? It looks pretty good.
No, thank you. No, I'm good.
And have you used Photoshop before?
No, this is my first time.
Oh, wow. Okay. So everything made sense. It was fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's look at something here. Okay, guys, you see that white right there? Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing, I'll talk about this in a minute, actually.
Yeah, I tried to get rid
Well,
of
this
that.
one,
Didn't work.
look, this would be one of those things where I was going to do a selection. So I'd probably come in with a pen tool and have to go in and kind of select all that.
Yeah.
That's not really what I was talking about. I don't care about it for this project. I could care less. But I'll talk in a minute about ways we can modify the selections that are very simple. Okay.
Okay.
There's also a defringe thing on here and all that stuff to do all that. Okay, everything looks good. This looks really good back here. Now, right here, if you notice, we're getting this repeating a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
See that? Boom, 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 same. Repeating. By the way, everybody in here, if you haven't taken basic design, you need to take basic design if you're looking to do it as a career and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I constantly get people I know haven't had basic design, and I'm not talking about it here. I could care less about it here, but they'll do a lot of things that are just basic design things, and it's because they never took it. Okay. They don't understand size relationships. They don't understand repeating shapes. They don't understand reduction of value to go into atmosphere. They don't understand just all these simple ideas. Okay. Where's Kevin?
Right here.
Okay, back there. What build? Oh, this building moved. Okay. Okay, good. Did you push back the transparency or opacity on the layer to get so you could clip this?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. And again, you guys, at any point, because this is so simple, on any image you want to play with, I'll talk about this more as we go, but I mean, it's so simple just to go, I'm going to pick a color. And I could do it as a gradient, or I can just do it as a fill. And just go through your layer panel and play around with these things. Like I could go here, let's say. Let's try this. That's kind of interesting. That could be a really easy start for like a concept painting. You know what I mean? But like if I go here, maybe see if I can go a little darker. Probably not, actually. I don't even know if I need to. You know, I could put another layer on here. And this is going to be screaming too bright, but it'll be fine in a minute. Let's go. You know, and I could start lighting up this building. Maybe there's a helipad up here. And then I could go in these windows. It's a simple selection. So this I could probably just do, and I'm not going to light up the whole thing. I'm going to light up pieces. Because if you ever look at office buildings at night, they're the colors shift and they're not, the whole building's not lit up like it is, you know, in the daytime. Now that's a bad selection, but that's fine. And then maybe I'll come up here and get a little this. Now, again, I'm going to put something down. It's going to be screaming. Maybe I'll try and And the first thing I want to do, see if I can just, again, if I can just do an overlay and find something that works. If I can't, that's fine. Like even that is kind of nice. The overlay. Or even that, because sometimes they'll be bluish, but they're not that bluish. So I can come in here and desaturate this a little bit. Maybe change it a little up here. Yeah, like that, more like that. Probably soften this edge a little. You know, and I could go in and start lighting this up and creating a night scene. Does that make sense? And I might come and take a helicopter and put it up here. That way I have more lights up there. And then down here, I can just start dotting things down here. Let's go on another layer. You know, and even putting little things like that. And then again, I'm going to go in and readjust all this stuff. Again, I might try an overlay and see what I get. Lighting's not bad, but it's too strong. Pull it down. I can, and then again, I'll go back in here again and go, okay, that's my general light, but then there'll be a couple of hot spots in here that are generating that light. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get into this later, so don't worry about it, okay? But what I'm using right now are overlays, a paintbrush, and that's it. That's all I'm using, right? You can see I already generated, what, 5 layers? You can see how fast you generate layers. Okay, is everything good? Any questions?
No, no questions.
Okay, good. It looks pretty good.
Professor, I have a question, just a quick
Sure.
one. You know, like once I started blowing up your picture, I was like, wow, this is really like, I mean, you kept on, you know, I'm not a photographer and I just kept on blowing it up and what, there's a lot of detail here. How much does your eye actually see? I mean,
The best example I can give you is, again, I'll go to my Saturday class or I'm doing a plein air workshop, those two things, okay? One of the first things you have to do, and this applies to this. Okay, this is the reason, by the way, that I'm constantly teaching those two things that I think they're so important. One is observational sketchbook work, okay? It's one of the fastest ways to accelerate your drawing skill, and observational painting, plein air painting, okay? Or from a model or whatever. But the first thing you have to do, because every time you take the students out, the first time I take them out is just on campus, okay? They get totally overwhelmed, okay? There's trees, there's leaves, there's trees back there, there's mountains, there's buildings, there's windows, there's stuff on the roof, there's rooftops, there's this, there's that, and they're just overwhelmed, okay? And so was I when I first did it. What you have to do is, what you have to learn is, almost no matter what scene you go to, you can reduce that scene. You can squint down, look at your masses, your big masses, and you'll go, there's actually 5 shapes here. There's actually 7 shapes here. There's actually 2 shapes here, okay? Because you're massing. Like if you got a bunch of trees over here, you don't have a bunch of trees over here. You have a mass shape there, okay? A building is a mass shape, okay? Everything, and that's the first thing you have to do is mass and go, like if you look at this building, if you look at this, let's try this. And I start going, let's try it this way. There's other ways you can do this, but. There's another way you can do this. You can reduce even more, but let's try it this way. So if I start looking at this, what I'm really doing is I'm going, if I take out the color, if I take out all this nonsense, right? All this visual noise, I'm really going, here's a mass.
Mhm.
And in this case, he has this now. So that's a mass. Here's a mass. Here's one. I can include this in there. I can actually include all this in here probably. It's one mass. And then I have this mass here. It's my foreground mass and then my background, right? So I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got basically 4 or 5 shapes. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
You know, and then if I'm going to go draw this, then I start going, okay, I got a box here. I got one over here. You know, I got a couple of boxes over here. And I just start thinking of it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Even this, if I break this down, I go, you know, this building here, I can even break that down into a box shape. And then just go, okay, it actually goes that way. And then there's another little box here. And I just start building out these really basic shapes. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I'm always looking at everything as just my first big shapes. And then I work into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to balance like how much you read, right? Because there's so much information there, right?
You have to train
and
your
you're-
brain. You have to train your brain to do that.
So like when you make decisions, I'm also trying to think through your process. Like when I decide, like you said, you know, change the lighting, or if I decide to put a gradient, am I doing these things because it's cool? Like, oh, that's cool. Or am
No.
I trying to go to an effect, you know, like
You're
I want.
here's what I would say. I consider the design, I always consider everything a design process. Okay. So if you're talking about drawing or painting, or let's say drawing, then I always go, you have to get your draftsmanship together in service to design. At some point it goes in service to design. Otherwise you become these people who I know a lot of, who've got reams this high of life drawings. And I'm going, okay, nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? Nobody cares. That's why you got a ream of them, because nobody cares. Those are the tools you use to build the skill set. Okay. Then you take the tools and the build and the skill set you've acquired, and now you put it in service to something. Okay. You can't get stuck in process. You got to go. And to your point, what you're saying about why am I putting it there? I'm putting everything down because to me, design is a distillation process. I'm distilling it down to just what I need. Does that make sense? So if you're doing a package design, you go, and I always used to take designers over to, I don't care what we were designing. I take them over to, I don't know, Nordstrom's or someplace, to the cosmetics area. Okay. There's a lot of really beautiful packaging in that, right? Could be a really high-end food place too. Could be that. But I like cosmetic packaging because they have a lot of stuff that's super, super simple. Okay. White box, reticulated varnish, really nice type choice, placed just right, and maybe one other element, you know. And you show younger designers that stuff and they go, well, that's so simple. And I go, oh, really? Go try and do it. Because it's not simple. It's about that type choice is exactly what it should be. It's right where it should be. It's the exact color it should be. And the other colors and things are placed exactly where they should be. And they're the right color that interacts with that color. And all of it is projecting and communicating something about that product if it's done correctly. Okay. Simplicity is what you're after, I think, right? And that's not just me. If you talk to almost any good designer, they're going to talk about simplicity. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is just put in, I never want to put anything in there just because it looks cool. Does that make sense? Now, and I know that's a rule of thumb. Sometimes you do go like, hey, that looks cool. That's fine. Right. I don't want to, if what you get a lot, again, mostly with entertainment people, they start throwing all this crap in it. You know, hey, there's an explosion back here and fire and this and that. And you're like, why is all this in here? You know what I mean? Where's my eye supposed to go? Because right now my eye is just dancing all over this thing. You should have a first, second, third read. Okay. And you should control the viewer's eye. When your viewer looks at your image, whatever it is, they should go bam, first read, boom, second read, boom, third read. And you've designed that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I did a package thing years ago, or I was actually doing a product and packaging thing with the people, Tonka, right? The people do those toys, right? And they asked me to come in because I was working there on some other stuff. And they go, hey, can you look at the packaging they're doing for this thing? And I came in and looked at it, and I looked at it and they go, okay. I go, you want my opinion about it, right? And they go, yeah. And I go, okay, it's a mess visually. I go, I know exactly what happened here. You have 3 or 4 marketing people and who knows who else in the meetings. This is the result of committee thinking. It's totally obvious. And what it looked like is it was for some sort of racetrack thing. It looked like and that's what I told him. I go, it looks like somebody took a handful of graphics and threw it at that box. That's what it looks like. Okay. There's no first read. There's no second read. There's no third read. I'm looking at this thing, my eyes dancing all over it. I don't know what the product is. It's got a bad illustration. It just had too many people involved, and it had no message. Does that make sense? So they've done the opposite. They go into meetings, because I've been in these meetings, and the marketing person goes, can we put a line on there that it has this? And you're like, it's in the illustration, man. The deep dive into the product should be on the back. Like if I pull you in with a great illustration on the front, if you ever notice toys, you go to wherever they are now and look at the packaging. It's always designed for a kid walking down the aisle to go, whoa, what's that? That's cool. Boom, I got them. You know what I mean? Then I can have them turn around and go, oh, it comes with this and it does this and it has this action and it does this. I can do all that on the back. Does that make sense? And, type choices and all that stuff. So in answer to that question, you're not doing stuff just for it to look cool. You do want it to look cool, obviously, but you're distilling it down to what does it need? Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And by the way, I don't care if we go off on a little bit of a design talk like this. I actually like that because Photoshop is just a tool that you're going to use to do these things. Okay. So you need to talk about it in the context of whatever it is you're doing. Does that make sense? Like I'm not going to go into on big, long talk about drawing here. It's not a drawing class, but I mean, I can speak to it a little bit if it relates to this class. Does that make sense? And I like design questions. I like to have a lot of design talk in these classes because otherwise you're doing what I see a lot, which is like, okay, you've learned a bunch of filters in Photoshop, but you don't know what to do with them. You're just putting filters on everything. And that's what it looks like, like you're not fooling anybody other than people who don't care. But if somebody's an art director, you're going to look at it right away and go, oh my God, it's a bunch of stupid filters on everything. You know what I mean? And filters are great, but you got to learn how to use them where in conjunction with other tools and things like that, manipulate them. And then it starts to get out of the realm of it feeling like a filter and you're just using it in, to do things with it without just slapping a filter on it. Okay. And we'll talk about that more as we get into filters. Filters are really simple. Okay. Who's this? This is Lily?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. What do you think? It looks good.
I had trouble with the clone tool. You can tell like on the edges of the building, it's all white space. I had the same problem somebody mentioned earlier with the building showing up. So I just need to practice using the.
What you got to get used to. Let's look at this stamp here. And I go, let's make a big one so we can see it. And I go, I want to pick this building or I want to pick this area over here. When I go here, oops. Wait, what happened here? Oh, there it is. When I go here, see that cursor up to the right? I got to look at that where it's, you're keeping your eyes on two things because you might go over here and go, oh, I don't want to do that either.
Right.
So you got to go, okay, I'm picking, you're like looking up there and picking it's like a palette. You're picking things out of it. Right. And then, and then I got to go, okay, that all looks pretty good, but you got to keep your eye on these two things. Does that make sense?
Right.
To be honest with you, I wouldn't do this with the clone tool. Okay. The only reason I'm doing this is an exercise, right? I would use the clone tool more for like what we just talked about with that portrait where I'm going to get rid of little blemishes and things like that. I'm probably going to use it more for that than anything. And then once in a while I'll go, oh, I want to grab a little of that and put it down here. And yeah, it works fine. I almost always have to manipulate it after the fact. Okay. It's just how it is. It's a funky tool. And thank God they finally made it where you can sample the layer below because you used to have to do it on the layer you were working on, period, which was kind of sucked, because you'd always have to make a copy of that layer and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question just about the tools that you have on the left. I don't have the first one on the second row.
Okay.
I don't know if mine's just like an outdated version or.
No. Okay. So one thing, you got this 3 dots right here.
Right.
And you can go edit toolbar and come up here and you can add. I hate the way they've done this, the way they've languaged this. It should just say active tools, non-active tools or whatever, right? But they go toolbar, extra tools. It's like, huh?
Yeah.
And if I remember right, you drag the ones you don't want over here or whatever.
Okay.
And these should be your active tools here, I think. It's weird that I don't have any. I just don't like the way they do this. Increasingly in this class, as we go along, you'll probably hear me bitch a lot about Adobe. Okay. And part of the problem I have with Adobe is they're fat and happy, which kind of irritates me. Okay. Because here's Adobe, I think Adobe's attitude. Okay. Because they don't fix a lot of small things that they should fix. And when I think their attitude is you go, hey man, this tool set sucks. It doesn't work. It's like, so what are you gonna do about it? Where are you going to? We're the only game in town. We're Adobe. We own everything. And it's like, that ain't gonna be forever, man. You know what I mean? When you get complacent like that, you get your ass kicked in the marketplace sooner or later. Okay. And the way it's happening, which is interesting to me, I always thought like, man, who's gonna be able to put a whole suite together like they have and compete? And that's not what's happening. It's like Procreate's taking a chunk of Photoshop now. Clip Studio's taking a chunk of stuff. There's these different applications, Affinity. They're all starting to eat into that bloated carcass that is Adobe. You know what I mean? And if they don't watch it, that's what the market's going to become, where they go, I'm just using all these different tools that are much better priced, or as powerful as yours, if not better. And no, it's not going to be a suite. I'm going to use this one and use this one and use this one. And you're talking about a generation of people. That's how they do everything. You know what I mean? They use an app for this. They use that for that. I don't think that younger people probably care that much if all this is put in a one suite. Does that make sense? And especially if it's free, Okay. So the only thing you had any problems with was the clone tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just, again, that's experience, right? And also being careful with how much opacity you have on it, because it rarely works very well if you do it with a hard edge tool with a lot of opacity. It's just going to stamp it on there with a hard edge.
Yeah, I realized at first I was doing it at 100% opacity, so I turned it down afterwards. Yeah.
And then also I usually go in with a soft brush, right? And again, you can come up here because this acts just like any other brush. It's right here. And I can pick a different one sometimes. I don't know if all of them will apply to, I can't remember. And then, hard softness here and size and all that here. And again, the size, just your bracket tools, right and left. So if I go right, it's that way, left this way. Not your parentheses tools, your brackets. Okay. And you don't have to hit command or anything. You just up or down. And then if you hit shift in those two, it'll make it softer, harder. Okay.
Right.
What kind of stuff are you usually photographing, or is it just everything?
Just everything, yeah.
Okay. Do you go out, and shoot stuff?
Yeah, yesterday I went hiking and I was just trying to take pictures of stuff, and maybe I'll come in and Photoshop some of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man. But look, you have to, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of photographers, man. None of them just go, shot a picture and boom, there it is. They take Lightroom or Photoshop and they tweak it a little bit. I think there's a level there or a threshold there where it's sort of like, and I think it's fine if that's what you're doing. Like with photojournalism, let's say, there's a level, there's a line there in the sand where it's like you're capturing an event and saying this was the event of a news organization or whatever. And that starts to become a little different if you start creating too much. Although they're still going to go in there and go, probably based on their memory, like should be a little more saturated. I want to highlight this over here a little bit. I mean, everybody's always done that in the darkroom. So that's nothing, you know what I mean? If you look, by the way, have you ever looked at Ansel Adams? You know Ansel Adams.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at his original photos?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you should look him up, because what's really interesting about Ansel Adams, I was listening to an interview with his son, right? And they were going, what was it like being around when he made these iconic photos? And he goes, well, you got to remember, it was just, we'd drive down the road and dad would go, wow, look at that. And he'd pull out, he'd pull all the stuff out and make a shot, and he goes, so it was just, it didn't seem like anything, And then he's the one I think that curates his archives or whatever. And he goes, and I've heard this a lot about Ansel Adams. He goes, his magic was in the darkroom. It wasn't when he was shooting it.
Right.
And there's this real iconic picture of, I think it's a sunrise or sunset or something over like, I don't know, Arizona or something. It's a really iconic photo. He goes, if you saw the original photo, you wouldn't think much of it. And I'm just going, that's total bullshit. And then I look it up and I'm going, oh my God, like it's night and day. One looks almost like a snapshot. And the other one's this beautiful Ansel Adams thing, you know, and all those things, all that magic he did was in, he loved the dark room. Okay. Which obviously now the dark room is this.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you're talking about that kind of thing, like, look how much, you know, if you go look at his work and how much he post-processed it, it's a lot. Okay. Which is probably also why his photographs are probably worth even more.
Right.
Because what are you going to do? You're going to take the negatives and try and recreate what he did. It's got to be those original prints that his hands were on, you know, and you got to remember back then that was in a dark room, man. So, you know, he was doing all that stuff I was talking about where he's like cupping his light and he's burning certain areas and he's lightening certain areas. It was a bitch, man. I did it when I was like 19 and I loved it. I love the dark room. It's really interesting. You know what I mean? And there's a certain amount of artifact to it and all that I like, but you know, now it's Photoshop. Okay, who's this? Mary. You here? Where you at? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
It looks good. I mean, I saw it last night because it came in so early. It came in so early. I'm like, oh God, this is going to be a mess. Like somebody spent 5 minutes on it and it was fine. This is really clean back here. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is.
I got tired of cloning, and so I got a paintbrush and started splattering paint in different colors.
The reality is that's what you would do. The other, you know, the other reality is I'd probably take something and probably break up this back here a little bit. So it looks like there's some more stuff out there on the horizon. Like that, just break it up so it's not a hard horizon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But you know, that's down the line. And then like here, I'd have to paint this back in a little bit. But other than that, it looks great. No questions?
I have a question. When you were using the paintbrush, how do you make the line straight? Can you, you click at the start and the finish and it makes a straight line?
You go, let's put, if I hold shift, it'll make straight verticals or horizontals. Or if I go, if I click here, hold shift and go over here, wherever it goes, it'll follow it and make a straight line.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're just holding shift and it'll constrain it. So I can constrain it this way. It's grabbing that last thing, which drives me crazy. Or this way. Or hold it, click, 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 click. So it's just the shift key.
Okay.
Yeah. The shift key in general in a lot of programs constrains something vertically, constrains something so it holds its proportion, stuff like that. Okay. Right on.
The last version of Photoshop I had was CS5.
You're still using that?
Oh no, I haven't used it in quite a few years. I kind of stopped doing Photoshop. I was using it for my business. I had to make my own ads, so I had to learn how to use Photoshop.
I think anybody who has a business has to learn this stuff now, unless, you know, I mean, it's dangerous one way and the other, because like my girlfriend has a restaurant up here and I'm always watching what the other people are doing. And a lot of times it's just like, I look at it and I go, like whatever they're messaging out into the world, I look at it and I go, well, there's an example of somebody my cousins or my nephew is really talented. He's really talented. So I'm going to have him do my ads and stuff. And you're like, oh my God, these things they look amateurish. I mean, just go hire a damn designer. You know what I mean? I know it costs money and all that stuff, but it's like, the worst thing you can do in a business is project amateurity. Does that make sense? You don't want to look like an amateur. You're not giving anybody any confidence, you know, in your ability. And also I'd argue, sometimes I look at that and I go, this doesn't look like a real business. It looks like a hobby. You know what I mean? I don't want to deal with hobby businesses. Oh, that's interesting. Who's this? Where's Melissa?
Right here.
There you are. What'd you do to this building? This is kind of interesting. Oh, did you just squash it?
Yeah, I rotated it straight so it's more straighter.
Yeah.
And I combined it with the back building so it looks like it has more texture on the side.
Yeah, it also looks like it's twisted a little bit in a weird way, which is kind of cool.
Mhm.
That's cool. And what about pen tool? Do you use a pen tool?
Yeah, I use the pen tool. If you go on the paths, I believe it should show it on the layers, right next to layers.
Oh, paths. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yep, there it is. Now make sure you get used to using it with something that's curved. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's where it gets tricky, is that little, I mean, it's not that tricky, but you know, this thing where you're, you know, pulling these kind of things and trying to get it, you know, usually you have to come back in. Now, again, see, I've got it active right now. Here's my handle. If I wanted to grab that, I would go Control, and it gives me my handle, or Option, and it's just going to do a corner. That's really the only two things you have to remember in the beginning. When you're in the pen tool, if you want that white arrow tool to manipulate your handles, Command, and if you want a hard edge, a hard corner, Option, which by the way are right here in your pen tool. If you click and hold this, so a lot of these tools have more tools in them as they drop out. If you look right here, right there, it says Convert Point Tool. See how that's a corner?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you can delete an anchor point, add an anchor point, curvature pen tool. That's a different thing. Freeform
What if
pen
you
tool.
put a point in the wrong place? How do you move it?
Right here, you could go delete anchor point. So let's say it's this one. I just click it and it got rid of it.
What if it's just like a quarter of an inch too far to the right and you want to move it to the
Then I
left?
would probably go with my, I'm still in my regular pen tool.
Oh yeah.
I would go to I would hold Command, and then I can manipulate this just from that point. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
If I wanted to move this point literally, then I'd probably add an anchor point. So I just added one, and then maybe come here and delete the other one. I don't know what the hotkey is for delete. And then delete the old one, and now I'd have a new one, right? Which made a tangled mess out of my, whatever you call it. How many graphic designers I have in here? You can
I'm
just hit the
an
little,
illustrator.
so I have illustrators. I'm assuming entertainment people, right? But it's got it in a few graphic designers, I'm assuming.
Clothing designer,
You're what?
a swimsuit designer.
Oh, okay. That's more fashion. Okay. Did I get all your questions, Melissa?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So let's look at something simple here. These are just gonna be simple things because I actually didn't think I'd have any time left over. Hey, can you guys hang on 2 seconds? I want to get another cup of coffee. It'll take me 2 seconds. Hang on. Okay, so let's look at something here. Let's say, I'll just use the same image. Let's say you're working. I went through everybody's, right? I did, yeah. Yeah.
You skipped mine.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Where are you at? Oh, there you are.
You skipped mine too.
Oh,
I skipped two?
Yeah, but I turned it in late.
Oh,
yeah,
that's why.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to turn mine in as well. Actually, the folder closed.
Folder closes a half hour before class.
Okay.
Always. Okay, good. So you used the pen tool and you used a curve thing, right?
Yeah, on that.
Yeah, okay, right there. And then that building was eliminated. Oh, you put a roof on it here, yeah?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
I took it from that like triangle-ish building in like the.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, perfect. And you're doing groups. So you've been in Photoshop before, yeah?
Yeah, I took VisCom in high school.
Oh, that's interesting right there. Oh, yeah. Well, you did quite a bit on here. Yeah?
Yeah.
Good for you. What's your major?
I'm a cinema and television arts at Cal State Fullerton.
Oh, interesting. And you don't have, so you have some Photoshop experience?
Yeah, just from high school, I took like a visual communications class and then just self-taught too.
How are you using it within your film stuff?
I haven't really dabbled in that yet, like adding Photoshop stuff to like my Premiere projects, but I'm interested in trying to do it more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things when I'm doing Premiere stuff that, again, I come at it from a different perspective. You know, I'll go into Illustrator. Like I did this thing where I created a mask in Illustrator, brought it into Premiere, used that. So, and then I made I think I did it by making seaming all these images together in Photoshop. I think that's how I did it. And then I had that come up. It was a word that was punched out. And then I had the images by the artist floating behind that. And then the whole thing became solid, right? But I was going into Illustrator, I was going into Photoshop, and then bringing it all into Premiere. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't think you can operate in that world without having Photoshop. You probably don't have to have Illustrator, but you got to have Photoshop. Okay, it's good. You have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
And by the way, let's, you know, with whatever majors you guys are in, I leave these projects are pretty open once we get moving. So if you want to make them specific, like Dimitri, if you want to make something specific to something you're doing, let me know. If I can work it in that way, it's fine. All I'm caring about is that you're using the tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
So if you want to use something for a project, go ahead. I want to use this project to do something that I'm doing. Let me know. And if we can make it work, we'll make it work. Or a graphic designer or whatever. It's just like this poster thing we're going to do. You know, I used to go, it's a movie poster. I just use that as a general term. I don't care what kind of poster it is. I don't care what it's for, really. You know, it's pretty wide open. Okay. All right. Now I have gotten through everybody's that I have in my folder, right? Yeah. Okay. So what I was doing was going back to here. So let's say we're working on this and we're doing a lot of work on it. Okay. And I go, and I'm just going to make a crappy selection again. But let's say that I spent, you know, it's this building with all these little cuts and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, so as I'm working through this project, I'm making a bunch of selections. It's taking me quite a bit of time and all that kind of stuff. This is a horrible selection. Never do this. Okay, so I don't want to have to keep doing that. Does that make sense? So you can come up here to select. So I have this selection going, right? You can see the marching ants, right? I'm going to go select, save selection. Okay, I'm going to go brown building. So now I go off and I start doing my other stuff. Then I come back and go, oh, I need to reselect that building. Okay. So now I just go to the same place, select, which is easy to remember because we're talking about selections. Okay. Load selection is going to come up. It's going to have, if I had 4 of these, let's say I got another one over here. Let's say I got this building. Then I go select, save selection, bad selection. And when I come back here, I can go select, load selection, and let's go, and it'll give me a drop down. So there's my brown building, hit brown building, hit OK, and it'll reselect it exactly how I had it. Does that make sense? You don't want to keep going and reselecting these things. Now, if I took this building and I go CV and it's on its own layer, now I got this and I can command, we talked about this, but I want to reiterate this. I have to click the little thumbnail, command click it, and that will also reselect it. Okay, does that make sense? And you're gonna, again, the reason I'm making a thing out of that is this thing of clicking a thumbnail and it like selecting something like in the path tool, you're gonna see it across a few different things. Does that make sense? Okay, another thing here.
Sorry, could you just say that one more time?
What's that?
What you did in the layers? Did you say
All I'm doing, if I have something, it's not, okay, if I do it here, so what I did is I command click the little window.
Oh, okay.
And what that'll do is whatever's in there, it'll select it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Now, if I took this back, or let's say that I whatever you call it, if I do it on this window, it's just going to select the whole thing, right?
Okay.
I think. It might not, hang on. Well, that's interesting. So when it's a background image, it doesn't let me do it when it's locked, which is actually kind of weird. When I could go command all, and that'll select all, right? But if you notice, if I unlock this layer, then I can select it, because why? Because now it sees that square is an object in that layer, okay? Whereas before it's just going, that's a background. You know, background's locked off. I can't do that. There's certain things you can't do when it's a background, okay? Now, this is just an aside. It's not a selection thing, but you're going to need to know it. Under image, we've got two things here. So if I want to make the image a different size, here's my image size, and I can change the resolution. And right here, that little chain is saying these two things are locked together. Okay. If I undo it, so now it's undone, right? So let's make this 40 inches, or let's make it 35. See how it squashed it? Or it went this way, right? Now, if I go up here, image size, and I lock these together, now I can go, well, I want this to be 15 inches. And it's gonna constrain the proportion. So now it just gets smaller, all in constrained. Does that make sense? And then the other one is you can go image, and they're both right by each other. Now we're talking about the overall image here. That's why it's sitting under image, okay? I can go canvas size. And it's giving you this option of where it's pushing out. We're not worried about that right now. It's in inches. I could change it to centimeter, anything. And I'm going to go, I don't know, 35 again. Okay, so then it didn't affect the image. It affected the canvas size. Does that make sense? Okay. And also, by the way, you can do it here with your crop tool. By the way, if you just hit C, you'll get the crop tool, but it lives right here in your toolbar. Does that make sense? Pretty simple, right? So now let's look at, oh, one other thing. So let's say, let's turn this off and turn that on. Let's say I make a selection. I do this once in a while. Let's fill this with something. By the way, one of the things I do a lot when I make a selection is I go to grayscale here in my palettes or in my swatches. I pick a mid-value gray and I put a layer behind it. Why do I do that? It's going to reveal to me if there's a lighter fringe color or a darker fringe color, because this is a flat mid-gray. Does that make sense? So when I make a selection, sometimes it's got a little of this crap. See that? Yeah. And, you know, I can come in, I could come in here and clean this up. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. By the way, this is where your constrain key comes in handy also. And I could clean some of this up this way. Another thing I do, this is too much, but if I have just a little bit like that, I might come, okay, so now I might make the selection, okay? And I'll go up here again to select, because we're talking about selections, right? And I'm going to go modify. And then it has border, smooth. The ones we're concerned with right now are expand and contract, and feather sometimes too. So let's go contract. And let's say 5 pixels, and see how it moved in. Let's try. So that's too much, right? So I'm going to go select, modify, contract. Let's try 2 pixels.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yeah.
So was that a background or a layer that you added, the gray?
layer.
It was a layer.
I layer and I just filled it with gray.
Okay, very well. And how did you do that?
Go ahead.
How did you do that? You just
well, right now you would go object, fill.
Fill, okay.
And you're going to do foreground.
Thank you very much.
Or I don't do it that way. I do it the hotkey. So I go either Command Delete gives me my background color, and Option Delete gives me my foreground color. Okay. So I do it with the hotkey, right? But it lives up here under. And by the way, it gives you a different fill thing. It says Shift F5. I've never used that. It's weird to me. Like, let's see if it works. It doesn't even work, which is weird. Okay. It's Option Delete or Command Delete. That's it. Okay. And that'll give you foreground or background color. So you're always working off this here. Okay. So I've got this selection, right? And it's eaten into it a little bit, which is what I want. And then I'm going to go select, inverse. And what it did, you can see it, it's selected now everything around the building. It just inverted the selection. Does that make sense? And I'm just going to go, does that make sense?
I'm not sure. Maybe if, like, you know, that the gold section on the far side of the building, I could understand it. I mean, I could understand eating into it when you're saying you cut, but the inverse thing, I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so what I had was the building selected, correct?
Right, okay.
So then I go inverse and it goes, okay, I started the building, but it's going into the background.
Oh, it's eating the background.
Yeah.
Is that
So
okay?
if I go, so now if I go delete, oops, I'm on the wrong layer, I think. Oh no, I'm not. That's weird. Why is that not deleting? Oh, it did up here. I think this is too big up here. So if you notice, it deleted all this stuff here. This is too big down here. So I ate into this a little bit to get rid of that extra fringe. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
Like a lot of times the tools in here, I'm going to show you one in a minute, they'll make pretty good selections, but I'm like, and then I can also use this feather thing, select, if I have it selected, if it was an animal or something, I might do this. Oh, not border, sorry. Let's see if I can do it this way. And then it's giving me this. It's saying feather radius 5 pixels. And see how the edge is soft? That it's selected? Let's invert it so it makes more sense. Select. Where'd it go? Inverse. And now look at the edge of the building. See how it's soft?
Yeah.
I might do that, like if this building's in the background, I might do just a little bit to soften it as it's going back in space. I might do this if it's a cat or a dog or something that has soft edges because they have fur. You know, just whatever it might make sense with, okay? One of the main things you want to get out of this, what we're talking about right now, is under select, you have this modify thing. You can contract, expand, because you can also expand it out, or soften and soften the selection if you want to do that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Casey?
I'm trying it out as you're trying it out.
Okay, good. What we're trying to do here is get to a point where we're working smart. And I think I've said this, in my career, I did not work smart a lot of the time, okay? I did what old dog, old tricks bullshit, okay? So when people are trying to show me new stuff, I'd always slag them off and go, I don't have time to learn this stuff. And it was stuff that would have taken 5 minutes and saved me hours, okay? Don't ever do that, okay? Keep up on this stuff. Keep up on, you don't have a choice, okay? Nobody who's going to have a career in this world has a choice. That this stuff moves exponentially fast now, okay? Whatever Photoshop is right now could be eliminated in 2 years. Who knows? It's not going to, but it is that fast, okay? I came from a generation, I probably said this, where things changed maybe every 10 years, maybe, and maybe not. How long were they using markers? 50 years, 40 years, it didn't change. Markers didn't change until this came along. You know what I mean? I think the only big step was like it went from watercolor to markers in like the 50s or something. You're not going to have that ability. It's just going to change exponentially. So make sure, and then when Adobe does this a lot, when you have the suite and all that, you'll get like, I don't know, like an email or something, and it'll go, here's the new things in Photoshop 2021 or whatever. Take a look at it, because a lot of times there's tools in there that are pretty mind-blowing. Like they're putting stuff in there, you're like, wow, I saw some the last time. I was like, holy smokes, I didn't know. They just keep getting this almost artificial intelligence kind of stuff going that works really well. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so that's that. So let's look at something else here. And I'm going to have you guys just fiddle with this overnight. It's real simple. What I just did, I want you to play with that, with your invert, your modified tools. That's what we just went over, right? And then, okay, so let's look at this. So let's start with this. You can see there's a big watermark on here, but I don't care. So here's a person in a complex scene, correct? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to select her, I'm going to have to go in with my pen tool, blah, 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 and really get in there. And then I'm going to have to really edit it afterwards. So, and this, again, this isn't always going to work, but it works pretty damn good. I'm going to go, where is it? It's with your magic wand tool. Now, again, the magic wand tool 90% of the time is useless. Like if I try and select her. Okay, so look, it just selected her eye right there, and that's fine. But let's go to 100. Can't even see my tool, but there it is. See, I'll just start selecting all kinds of crap. It's just not a great tool. It also fringes around the edges really bad. Every now and then there's a good use for it, okay? So I'm gonna go here under that same tool set, and it's a object selection tool. And when I select this tool up in my control bar, I have the option of lasso or rectangle, okay? So I'm gonna go, I don't wanna sample all layers and all that. I'm gonna use the lasso tool. And I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna just kind of go around her. Oops, hang on, I made a bad selection. You can see it, look. So I'm gonna go Command C, Command V. That made a pretty damn good selection, all right? Out of a very complex background, okay? Now, part of the reason that's probably working is she looks very different than the background. The background's mostly greens and things like that. But down here, when you get to her feet, that's probably more of a contrast thing, but pretty nice selection, okay? Oops. Let's look at the edges. Actually, even the edges are pretty good. Yeah, not bad. Okay, now you're going, well, why'd you show us the other crap if you can just do it like that, right? Because this isn't going to work all the time. That's why, okay? Okay, and now let's try this. Let's go back to our original layer. And let's go, instead of using, let's go back to our object selection tool. Instead of using lasso, so use rectangle.
Did you use magnetic lasso or something?
Not magnetic.
No, object selection tool. Right there. It lives with your magic wand tool. Okay, you can see it made the same selection. I didn't need to lasso it, okay? Now, let's look at something. Does that all make sense? Okay. I'm creating a clone army. Okay, let's look at a little more complex. I don't know if it's really more complex, but look, you got all this fur. So let's try it with let's try it again. Let me come in. Oops.
Oh, look, it sucked on.
It what? Oops. I'm going to go Command C again, Command V. Not bad, right? But look, it missed the foot. You see that? So let's look at another thing now. I'm going to go also select it out here a little. Didn't select that the right way. And that's partly because I didn't really go in and do a good selection, but I did that on purpose. So I'm going to go down here, right here, which is your quick mask. Okay, I'm going to go boom. And what that's showing me now is what is selected. Does that make sense? And I'm going to go, this should have got the foot in there. So I'm going to go to my eraser. And again, I'm going to do a lousy selection. And I'm going to erase this mask out. Here, look, those toes aren't selected. And then here, I'm going to switch to my paint brush. And I want to paint this in because that's not part of the selection. I just did a lousy. Now I could come in here and adjust this by, let's go back to the eraser tool. Command E is your eraser. And this is good enough for now. Well, let's go, oh, right here. Oops.
I did.
Right here. Go back to my brush tool. I'm going to paint this in. And then I'm going to go click my quick mask mode again. And then go Command C, Command V. And now I got his feet and everything in there. Does that make sense? Now, what I'd probably have to do if I come in here, like it's not bad, but if you look, you're getting more of this wispy hair and all that. So I'd probably have to, it's actually not bad, but I'd probably come in here again and maybe either paint. I like to pull things out. Let's just try this. This probably won't work. Let's try it. So I might come in here with my smudge tools and just kind of pull this out a little bit. One of the things you'll see that really screws up, most of this is pretty good though. It's not real hard edged. Most of it looks pretty good. I might soften this up a little. One of the things you'll see with when you make a selection that will screw it up is something like, obviously with hair or something like that. And I'll show you a much more complex hair tutorial later. Is that they, you know, it could get a hard edge, obviously. And then if I get that kind of hard edge, I want to pull some things back over the background, because if I don't pull things over the background, it's never going to be believable. What you don't want Photoshop stuff to look like when you're doing this kind of work where you're, you know, manipulating images is for it to look like I cut and pasted it in there. Does that make sense? And by the way, that also includes lighting. Okay. So this could, and I'll get into this later much more, but like if I go, this is I mean, this could even come down if I was just making an image for a magazine or something, let's say. You know, I might select this guy. Let's make a selection. Let's just do it here. I'm going to put another layer over this, and I want to pick some of this warmth. Let me go to my eyedropper tool and pick some of this warmth. There's a lot of this warmth in this environment. It's a deserty African environment or wherever it is, right? Now let's try it with this. And I might use something like that, really pull it down. And actually where I'd really use it is probably right here. Actually, let me do this again. And we'll get into this more, but I'm gonna make another selection. Because when they're in this environment, animals, they'll get a lot of light bouncing up into their belly. So I'm just looking for something that'll merge underneath because I can always pull it back. And I probably wouldn't do it with a gradient. I'd probably do it. And then I'm going to come in here with my eraser, real soft eraser. And I'd have to adjust the color too, by the way. Real soft eraser, knock down my opacity. And and then I'd have to go in and manipulate this in my color palette to get a little more light on. I don't want too much on his fur there. And start to light him up a little bit because I'm almost can guarantee you that in this environment, he was getting more light bouncing up into his underside. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you're starting to get into these things where you want to subtly make it a little more interesting from a lighting perspective. Yeah. Now I would never probably do that. You can see it's lit up a little more now. You know, and I'd have to manipulate it a little more. Or let's see if I can do. Pull it down a little bit. And then I might even adjust the hue a little bit there. That's a little nicer. Now, if I was doing this for National Geographic, probably wouldn't do it, maybe, unless it was actually, I saw it there and I go, I'm going to highlight that a little bit and I'd probably saturate it a little more. But I'd probably come in here. I might cool off the top of him a little bit because there's a sky up above him that it might cool off the top of him a little. I'll do it really subtly. But what it does is, if I have something I cut out and paste it into an environment, those little things, the light reflecting and things like that around, will put it into the scene as opposed to feeling like something I cut and pasted into the scene. Does that make sense? Now in this scene, his lighting is going to work fine because I'm just cloning him and moving him over. Okay. But I'm always looking at it from the perspective of a painter or an illustrator going, how can I make this a little more dramatic? How can I, but if I was taking this line and putting him into another environment, I would really have to look at the lighting around it and make sure that it doesn't feel cut out. Does that make sense? And by the way, digital painting's the same thing. Okay. If you're doing a car in a digital painting on a nice sunny day like today, that red car, even though I'm not cut and pasting it in, I'm going to warm up the sides of that car. It's going to be a nice warm red. And as it goes over the hood, the roof, and the trunk, I'm going to cool that red off just a little bit. You're not even going to notice it. But what does it do? It's indicating, it's reflecting the sky a little bit where the side panels sort of dip this way and they're tilting up. I just saw this on my car the other day. It got very blue. Okay. And the rest of the car was much warmer. And the only reason I'm talking about that, I'm not talking about in relation to painting really. I'm talking about it when you start compositing images together, you have to think about those things. Otherwise, it's just going to look like somebody cut something out with a pair of scissors and glued it in there. Does that make sense? And I might have to do some cast shadows and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So Professor, I really like it. I'm just like, you just went to light speed on me a little too fast. So if I could kind of walk it back. So first we cut it just like we cut the building, but we did the lion. Yeah. Then we're talking about edge control, softening it, using different features on it. Yep. And then we're talking about light control.
Yep.
Like
now lighting, wait a minute. Now lighting, I'm jumping ahead a little bit because we're talking about compositing. Okay. We will get more into that as we move along. Okay. Don't get overwhelmed with that part of it. I tend to jump ahead a little bit because I have to when I'm talking about compositing and things. Because here's the problem. If I teach this class the way they traditionally teach Photoshop, at least most people I know of, they don't talk about any of that. So what you end up in those classes is a bunch of crap that just looks all Photoshoppy and crappy. Like you do have to talk about the design a little bit, okay? And to me, the lighting and all that stuff is just design. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And what
I mean,
I'm
I
saying
think
is
I
if
think it's
take
helping a
multiple-
lot.
We're going to take multiple images to do this poster thing, right? And what I'm talking about right now, and we'll by the time we get to it, it'll make a little more sense. I want to make sure that these things feel like they're in the same environment. That's all I'm really talking about. Because if you take something from one image into another, it's just going to look cut out if you don't think about the lighting. And most people don't think about it. It's really weird. And I don't care if you're a graphic designer, if you're an illustrator, if you're an entertainment person, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. Like if you're doing a graphic design job and they're like, hey, we want a lion walking around the mall. You know what I mean? Then that's completely different lighting than this. You know what I mean? So I have to think about that. Otherwise, it'll just look like I cut it out with a pair of scissors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what I'm also talking about is that what I'm doing right now is like what I'm using right now is the same tools we've just been talking about. I'm using overlays, I'm using a gradient, and I'm using selections. That's all I'm using. Okay. And you can see very quickly it can become a pretty complex conversation. Does that make sense? And my point to that is a lot of this stuff, it's pretty simple tools, right? Now there's people who take it to the nth degree, and that's a different thing. I mean, here's another example. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Another example of what we just talked about using it in a different way would be if I take this lion shape now. So I'm going to reselect the lion. Oops, that was weird. And then I'm going to go make a new layer. So now I have a selection, an empty selection on a layer, correct? And then I'm going to go, so this is a little trick that you can do with your overlays. It's multiply, okay? And I'm just going to pick a gray, this one. And then I'm going to go option, delete, and fill it, okay? And then here's another little new tool here. I'm going to go edit, transform, okay? Because this tool will come in really handy. So you have all these different tools here. You have skew, which is this. You have perspective, which is this. It's all under transform, under edit. And then you have, you know, rotate and scale and all that. I'm going to go to distort. And I'm just going to take this thing down here, pull it up to his feet a little bit, have it perspective out a little bit. Click that. And then I'm going to go to our overlays, and this works really good on multiply. And it's going to give me a shadow that looks like that animal is casting that shape shadow, right? So I'm just filling the shape with, it's a selection. I'm filling the selection with gray. And when you do gray over a multiply layer over something, it basically assumes a shadow value of the color underneath it. Does that make sense? So it's a really nice tool for a lot of things where I want to do that fairly quickly. Okay. And if you notice, it's working pretty good. Now I might soften the edge a little bit. I think it's actually fine. I could also come in here. Where is it? I could also come in here and darken it, which we'll talk about tomorrow. That's too dark. I don't like it too dark. Like maybe there. You know, I do that all the time when I want to have something with this distinctive shape casting a shadow, right? And it's fairly abstract, which is fine, but I know it's accurate. It's fairly accurate. Okay. Does that all make sense? Yeah. I think there's one other thing I want to talk about. Let me check my notes. Does that all make sense, you guys? What I want you to do tomorrow or by tomorrow is, and again, I should have this video up pretty quick now because I don't have to go anywhere. Basically what I just did, just use your object selection tool. I'll give you these two images if you want to use them. You can use something else if you want. don't worry about the lighting and all that stuff. I just want to start talking about it now. Okay, and here's another thing, you guys. I'm going to always give you guys, I might jump ahead a little bit because it's something that I want you to think about. I'm not really worried about you doing it yet. I just want you to, I'm very big on making you aware of things that are going to happen in a little bit, or just making you aware a little bit of how these things work on a more professional level. And also, I'll always give you a heads up about a project we're going to have, which I just did. We're going to do a poster is the first thing we're going to do. So you can start thinking about it now. Okay. I don't believe in ambushing students and all that kind of crap. I don't like that kind of stuff. Okay. So I want to make sure like you can start thinking about it now and go, oh, I'm going to do a poster on this or whatever. Okay. Could be a movie post. By the way, I've had people do it where they just go shoot their friends or something and make a poster for whatever, you know, have fun with it. Okay. But start thinking about it. I don't care. And don't do this though. If your solution is anime or manga based, I'm never going to go for that. Okay. And there's a reason for that. Okay. I don't care if people like manga or anime, that's their business. I don't care. What I don't like about it, it says a lot of terrible design in it. Okay. And then people go, I want to do this poster on that. And I go, okay, so what are you going to do? You're just going to cut out a bunch of cartoon characters and stick it in a poster? That's not interesting to me. Okay. Does that make sense? What I want to use is better assets, where it's like I've had people go, I'm going to do this underwater scene, and they start using water reference and putting things underwater where they feel murky and doing all that kind of stuff. And then type, it's going to have type in it. I want to have some sort of title. It could be the cover of a book. It could be a poster. It could be whatever. I don't care. Does that make sense? And you know, we'll get to that probably start it next week, because I keep thinking that this is a normal class, but it's every day. So it's going to go pretty fast. So that's the reason, you know, what we're always going to do is learn a handful of tools that I'm hoping are digestible, right? And then take those tools and make something with it. So you have to make decisions as to how you're using them and how you're manipulating them. Does that make sense? Again, otherwise there's no point in learning this stuff. Otherwise it's just step by step, and who cares, right? You got to use the tools in a creative way. I know there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I guess not. Oh wait, let me check one more thing. Oh, and the other thing, I don't care if you do a cast shadow or not. I don't care about that. But I do want you just to come up here and take a look at edit. I don't have anything selected. Edit, transform, and just these: scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective. And warp's interesting. So if you go to warp, and we'll do a project of this later. Let's go to our line again. Edit, transform, warp. What this does is it gives me a grid. You can't see it right now. I can turn it on here, up here, but I'm not going to. And I can literally start warping things. And we'll use this for something later. Does that make sense? So that's also under your transform tools, okay? And I don't know why my grid's not coming on. Hang on. Oh, there it is. Hang on. So there's my, I could turn it on right here where it says 3 by 3, or I could go 4 by 4. And then I can see my points that I want to manipulate. And this, if you notice, it's also got handles on it right there, just like your pen tool. Okay, it will come in very handy later. I'll show you how to wrap a paint job around a vehicle and things like that. Okay, that's down the line. Does that make sense? And I just want you to play with them. Okay, the edit transform tools are just simple. Okay, they're not all that complicated. Okay. So what we're talking, okay, so we've talked about we've talked about what, 3, 4, 5 selection tools, correct? And now you've added this little quick mask idea in here where you can add something to the selection or pull it back. Again, by the way, when you're using your quick mask mode, you can go, pretty sure you can still use your opacity and all that if you want to get really tricky with it. Your edit tools. And then we're just starting to talk a little more about overlays, right? You're going to find out overlays are really useful for a lot of stuff. Okay. And if you start going and looking at photographs right now, or movie posters, I'll pull some, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit tomorrow. You're going to see basically what we've just been talking about. You're going to see it over and over again. You're going to see overlays over and over again, assets that have been separated out, fades, you know, how do they fade in the background? Backgrounds have been manipulated with color. And tomorrow I'm going to go over 3 new tools that aren't selection tools, but they're going to be really key. Does that make sense?
So Mike,
Yeah.
really quick, just clarifying question for the homework. So you want us to make a selection of like an object against like a complicated background and duplicate it?
Yeah.
And then you want us to also play with the transform?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't have to necessarily be a shadow, but just.
No, I don't care.
Okay.
I just, you know, play with your, the distort, the skew, and if you want to play a little bit with this warp thing. And again, it's not going to show the grid. Okay. It's going to show, if you go over here, and then I can select a grid 5x5. You can do a custom one, whatever, but it defaults, I think it's, well, now I've already changed it. What happened here? Hang on. Oh, that's why. Here's the custom grid size. So I could go, I don't know, 14. I don't know. Let's try a weird number. And so I can create a custom one, right? I never have. I usually don't even look at it because it just sort of automatically picks points as you touch them. So I don't usually use it. It comes in handy though sometimes when you're doing something like we'll do later, where you're starting to wrap these things over a more complex form. You might want to see your grid. Does that make sense? So for like concept art, it's a really good thing because what I'll show you later is like you can have a vehicle, you can create a paint job, let's say, right? Like maybe it's a texture, maybe it's rust or something on a plane or something, right? And I'll take that, I'll use my distort tool, I'll wrap it down so it's in the right perspective. Then I'll take my warp tool and I'll wrap that texture around it, right? And then using another tool, what we'll do is I create that and I go, okay, now it looks like it's wrapped over. But then I can go throw another pattern in there and it'll instantly conform to that. So I can do like 15 paint jobs in 15 minutes. Does that make sense? So if you're doing a vehicle study, you're going to want to do multiple, or it could even on certain, you could do it on character design to a certain extent. Like you can change the pattern on a shirt or something like that and go, here's his daytime outfit, here's his nighttime, here's whatever it is, or here's a bunch of different ideas. And you can do it like that really fast. Does that make sense?
Also for like buildings and like windows, right? Like skyscrapers, and you can
Yeah,
just,
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if I created one and I go, well, here, yeah. If it was some kind of interesting building and I go, well, the windows do this, they wrap around or whatever. And then I go, okay, you know, but, or maybe it's like a pattern or something on the building that wraps around the building or something like that. Yeah, I can just go click, boom, change it, click, boom, change it, click, boom, change it, export, 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 line them all up on a thing. And like, here's your 15 ideas. You know what I mean? Those kind of things are workflow things, obviously, right? You've got to develop a fast workflow. Okay. Like I've had students sometimes and I go, you got to speed that up or whatever, you know, and I don't really I don't expect everybody to be fast now. That'll happen later. But like, if you're talking about an advanced class or something like that, maybe, and then you kind of got to go, because I've had people, they go, well, I'm real meticulous and I'm a perfectionist, which I can't stand that when people say that. And I go, well, good luck. You'll never work. You know what I mean? And the other thing with that is everybody who tells me they're perfectionist, my first question is they go, well, show me something you ever did that's perfect. You know what I mean? Because there isn't anything. And the other thing is most people tell me they're perfectionists do really lousy work. You know what I mean? So I don't really know why they say that. I just think it's a weird thing to say. Nothing I did's ever been perfect. You know what I mean? I don't consider myself a perfectionist. I consider myself that just like everybody else, you're doing a job. Like they say, you never finish a job. It just gets abandoned. Okay. And the example I always use is like at Imagineering before I figured this out. The producer, I'd be sitting there working on something on my drafting table or whatever, and the producer would come over and she'd go, hey, you done with that? And I would just, because I was new, I kind of felt like, am I supposed to be done with this? And that's not what she was saying. And I go, yeah. she'd pull it off my desk, it was gone. You know what I mean? I go, shit, I'm not done with that, actually. And it would just go into the process of being copied, scanned, mounted for the presentation. I'm like, that's not done, you know? And so every time she came around after that and go, hey, is that done? I go, no. You know what I mean? I'll hand it to you when it's done, you know? And then sometimes you just run out of time, okay? Okay, so this object selection tool lives right here with your magic wand tool. Yeah? Okay. All right, you guys. Tomorrow, I think I'm just gonna go over, actually I might go over, I'm kind of going a little, I guess it's because we're every day. It just feels crazy fast, but I think everybody's getting it, right? I mean, it's pretty simple so far, right? Okay, because what I want to do is build very simple and then build, you know, just the reason I can't do math, you know, started here, lost 2 or 3 layers and never recovered. Okay, never recovered. So that's what I'm trying to do, build a foundation and then build the complexity up where it doesn't feel complex when we get to it. Okay. Okay. All right, you guys, I'll let you go and I'll see you in the morning. I'll put this up pretty quick. Okay. Again, it just has to export. I have to edit, export, and then I'll put it up. Okay.
Thanks,
Great.
Mike. Bye.
I'll see you mañana.
Bye.
Bye.